We're in the third offseason of the DeMeco Ryans era. Let's talk about this one compared to the others, what the biggest changes have been. And the Texans, they're still looking for an offensive coordinator. Are they going to interview the right guy tomorrow? Let's get into it.
Yeah, it's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, Locker Room. Yeah, we in the Locker Room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stay.
It is the Locker Room, number one source for Texans digital content. I am Landry Locker. The Texans, they are looking for an offensive coordinator for the second time in 3 off seasons. 2 out of 3 times that DeMeco Ryans has been head coach of the Texans, he's been looking for an offensive coordinator. That's an interesting stat when it comes to the Texans. I kind of want to touch on year 1 offseason for DeMeco Ryans, year 2, and then this one, and just kind of discuss and talk about how we feel about DeMeco Ryans now as compared to last year, and just the overall outlook of what the offseasons have looked like. And the year 1 one, I think, was pretty much a honeymoon phase. That was where we were talking about DeMeco Ryans. We were talking about DeMeco Ryans being the savior, and we were talking about how DeMeco Ryans is going to cover up Nick Caserio's mistakes. DeMeco Ryans is going to be the chosen one, and no more Bill O'Brien, blah, blah, blah. And he paid off. It paid off. Year 1 was perfect. You had the most memorable draft day in franchise history, acquiring CJ Stroud and Will Anderson. Bobby Slowick after year 1. He was getting head coaching interviews. You had Will Anderson, defensive rookie of the year, CJ Stroud, offensive rookie of the year, and the expectations heading into last season were as high as they'd been over the course of the entire franchise history of the Houston Texans. And that was kind of the year 1 honeymoon phase of DeMeco Ryans right there. Then you go into year 2, you have those expectations, and the defense gets better, but the offense gets worse. Your quarterback takes a step back. Your defense takes a step up. The offensive coordinator who was getting head coaching looks, he's gone. He's probably the most hated man in town during the season.
Damn it, Bobby.
And then you find yourself in a situation where now what? And I think there's a couple of tendencies when it comes to how you look at the Texans. Tendency 1, you look back at what things were like before DeMeco got there, and you automatically give DeMeco the benefit of the doubt. And you say, DeMeco Ryans will fix it, and we'll figure this out. The other mindset is, and this is mine, you look at DeMeco Ryans and you look at how his offense is compared to the defense, and you're automatically kind of skeptical that they're going to make the right choice when it comes to bringing in an offensive guy or evaluating offensive personnel. Now, maybe that's something that changes. Maybe he and Nick Caserio get together and they kind of figure that out. But that's kind of where you are when it comes to the DeMeco Ryans layout. The situation, where he's at, what that vibe's like. And I look at one thing that doesn't really get talked about enough, and I want you to tell me if you think that I'm perhaps over analyzing this, or if this is something that we need to keep an eye on. Where Will Anderson went from year 1 to year 2, and where CJ Stroud went from year 1 to year 2. Because those were the 2 first picks that DeMeco Ryans made as head coach of the Houston Texans. And obviously, quarterback is the most important position. But there was talk about Will Anderson. And the talk in year 2 was, and this was a popular national topic, I don't think it was as much of a thing locally, although some people did touch on it. But the conversation was, did the Texans give up too much for Will Anderson? Was the trade too steep? Did they give up? They gave up a first, a second. Did they give up too much for Will Anderson? And now here we are, and Will Anderson, he's elevated his play. CJ Stroud has kind of regressed. I think that's fair to say. And you can make a case Will Anderson might actually be a better player than CJ Stroud right now. I think that case can be made. Will Anderson might be a better player than CJ Stroud right now. Does that mean he's more important? No. Does that mean he's going to get more of a contract? Does that mean you get rid of CJ Stroud? No. But a strong case can be made that Will Anderson right now is a better player than CJ Stroud. He's one of the faces of where the rebuild is. You don't hear Will Anderson coming out and saying, I thought it was too easy. You don't have Will Anderson saying that. You have Will Anderson saying he wants to get even better. You have Will Anderson saying, hey, we can't lose to chump teams. Will Anderson's kind of the voice of this thing. When you talk to anyone in the locker room, not this locker room, the Texans locker room, the face of the swarm, he's the first name that DeMeco Ryans mentions. He's the first name that offensive guys seem to mention. Will Anderson is kind of one of the faces of what the Texans are and what they're about. CJ Stroud kind of in a make or break situation. What's going to happen with CJ? Is CJ going to be the franchise guy? How are we going to feel about CJ Stroud this time next year? When we're talking about contract extensions and we're talking about CJ Stroud and will the Texans pay CJ Stroud? Should they pay CJ Stroud? Is it going to be a Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy type discussion where you kind of wonder, should this guy be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league? Or is it going to be a situation like when Joe Burrow got paid? Or when Patrick Mahomes got paid? When Josh Allen got paid? When Lamar Jackson got his contract? What's it going to be like next year? And the offseason vibes right now, I asked the question in the chat, what are the offseason vibes in year 3? Are you still in the honeymoon phase when it comes to DeMeco Ryans? Do you still feel like DeMeco can do no good? Do you have reservations about DeMeco Ryans? Are you worried about how he and Caserio are going to gel? Because make no mistake about it. If we're having this same discussion for any reason other than the guy that they decide to hire is a head coach somewhere, then there's going to be legit concerns about DeMeco Ryans. You can't kick the can down the road that much. And Nick Caserio trusted DeMeco Ryans in year 1 to pick the offense. He trusted DeMeco Ryans to figure out this offensive system. We wanted nothing to do with the Patriots system. We wanted nothing to do with that offensive system. Rightfully so. But 2 years down the line, you just fired your offensive coordinator. Your quarterback had a good year 1, and then he regressed. You have one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, and this is just as much Caserio's fault as DeMeco's, the offensive line situation. You made Dalton Schultz one of the highest paid tight ends in the league, and your wide receiver room has been completely depleted. Now, you can say that's because of injuries. You can say Tank Dell getting hurt doesn't help the situation. I would agree with that. But there was regression of Tank Dell before. He had the good game against Kansas City, but before that, we were wondering what was up with Tank Dell. So the vibes in year 3, I don't like speaking for the entire fan base, and I don't like saying, this is how it is or that's so. But it almost doesn't feel as urgent as I think it actually is when it comes to the decision that the Texans are making and the decision they're going to have to make. I think eventually they end up with Nick Caserio as their offensive coordinator. And I think that's a hell of a hire. I think that's an elite hire, and hopefully that works. There's no guarantees that it does. If he has the same personnel that Bobby Slowick had, then instead of saying,
damn it, Bobby,
we're going to say, damn it, Nick. Maybe both Nicks. But this is a crucial offseason. Because if CJ Stroud doesn't progress, and some might take exception with saying he regressed based on the surroundings, but if he doesn't progress next year tangibly, then you're in a really tough spot. Because you're going to be paying him like he's an elite quarterback, whether he develops into that or not. You're going to have to pay Derek Stingley. Will Anderson, if he continues to get better, he's going to be among the highest paid defensive players in the league. You're going to have to figure out what to do with this offensive line. Some of these other young guys that you got, you're going to have to start paying. This was supposed to be, this year, this was supposed to be the hot spot of where you take advantage of having CJ Stroud on his rookie deal. Instead, you use that money recklessly on the offensive side of the rock with CJ Stroud's surroundings. Used it wisely on defense. I'll give you credit there. And CJ Stroud looked more like a rookie in year 2 than he did in year 1. So that's really the overall feel of this. I think this is a very urgent situation. You're not playing with house money anymore. We go back to year 1. We were talking about year 1 with DeMeco and Nick. You had 2 first-round picks for a 3-year period. After not having a lot of draft equity before that. But you had multiple first-round picks for a 3-year period. That's an opportunity. You had unlimited cap space after the year before having $50 million in dead cap. So you were kind of playing with house money. Now your cap situation's not great. You're not starting from square one on offense. You have some pieces that you like. But this is a crucial situation. Right now, like if I asked you on the defensive side of the rock, if I asked you on the defensive side of the rock, all right, how many guys on that side of the rock could you see being a part of things 2 years from now? It's a long list. A long list of guys. It's an encouraging list, and it's a hell of a core. Your core is great. On offense, you have 2 guys that you feel with 100% confidence are going to be a part of things for better or worse. One is CJ Stroud, one is Nico Collins. Outside of that, you could have 9 new starters 2 years from now. And I know there's a lot of turnaround in the NFL, but you could easily have 9 new starters. And we don't know how good CJ is going to get under the new offensive coordinator. There's some uncertainty there. But you could have 9 new starters on offense. And here's the thing. If you told me that on defense, they were going to have 9 new starters, you know what I would say? I would say I trust DeMeco to get the most of those guys no matter what. I don't care if you give me 11 guys off the street. DeMeco Ryans can coach defense, and we can figure that out. We don't know that about this offensive hire. And we don't even know who they're going to hire. All signs point to Nick Caserio. I think that would be excellent. I think everybody wants to kind of pick from that McVay tree. It's an organizational compromise. He's an impressive guy. He's the only guy that you've interviewed that's gotten an interview elsewhere. I think if you can get Nick Caserio, I think you can be pleased with that. But if you expect Nick Caserio to work with what you have in front of him right now, it's going to be a disaster. And that's kind of where I wonder. And tomorrow on SNL with myself and Cody Stutes, that's where I kind of wonder What are the questions that are going to be asked in this interview from the interviewer and the interviewee? Like, what does Nick Caley want to know in order to feel comfortable enough about taking this job? Because here's the other thing about Nick Caley. And these are just kind of the types of potential hires that you have. You have some guys who have options, and they approach an interview as if they're asking some of the questions. And then you have guys like Gerard Johnson, Bill Lazor, Nixon, these other guys, they just want the job. They just want the gig. Nobody else is going to hire them to be their offensive coordinator. They just want the gig. So you're asking them the questions. What does Nick Caley ask them when he goes into this gig? Maybe it's just a foregone conclusion he's going to get the job. He likes it. I don't think it's an unappealing job. But my top question would be, hey, this offseason, we're focusing on offense, right? DeMeco, I know you're a defensive guy. I know you've been at the Senior Bowl hunched over watching these defensive linemen, and you'd probably like another safety. But we're focusing on offense, right? You're not going to ask me to be a miracle worker. Like, you're already asking me to work with a defensive-minded head coach. You're going to at least let me get some assets, like some talent. You're going to give me that opportunity, right, coach? That's the first thing I'm asking if I'm Nick Caley. Nick, good to see you. DeMeco, good to see you. That's what I'm asking. That's exactly what I'm asking him. What are we doing here? Because this is a crucial time. Don't lower the intensity. This is a crucial time for the Texans. They got a hell of an opportunity. And this isn't like, people want to talk about a few years ago. A few years ago, you could have closed your eyes and thrown a dart at all the positions, and whatever it landed on, the chances are you needed it. You don't need that anymore. You got one of the best defensive coaches in the league. You got one of the best young defensive cores in the league. You've got all that. You can focus on offense. And it doesn't have to be either or. Granted, the offensive line has to get better. Just anyone but what they got right now can be better. A better philosophy, a smarter offensive mind can make the offensive line better. Better receivers can make the offensive line better. More backs can make the entire offense better. A better vibe with CJ can make the offense better. It's not too far-fetched to say that with CJ's talent, with what Nico Collins can do, with the fact that if you are intensely trying to improve the offense, how well you can draft, how you can figure that out, it's not too far-fetched to think that the Texans can turn this thing around. It's not crazy. It's not no man's land. They just got to make the right hire, and there's got to be this urgency. But it's damn sure not a lost cause. Swarm in the super chat. We got
Swarm.
Texan and Cali asks, don't forget Nick has done more good than bad. They got rid of Bobby. Give them the benefit of the doubt, bro. Let's all reset and bring some positive vibes. I'm not here to bring you positive vibes. I prefer positive vibes, but that's not mine. Texans radio, I think, is on. I think John Harris, my guy, and Vandy, they can do that for you. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm not here to give you positive vibes. I want positive vibes. I agree with you that Nick Caserio has done more. I've been a Nick Caserio apologist. I mean, when he's deserved criticism, I've given him criticism. I don't blame him for his first two coaching hires. I thought it was perfect with where they were in the process. I commend Nick for taking a step back with DeMeco and allowing him to run the offense that he's wanted to run. I think Nick's done an excellent job with draft picks. We can nitpick some of the draft picks, but the reality is when you're drafting guys, a lot of times it's not always going to work. So yeah, I agree with you. I'm not sitting here saying that Nick Caserio, anything bad about Nick Caserio. I'm not saying anything bad about DeMeco. I'm just saying that this is a really, really crucial offseason. And the reality is the knock on DeMeco Ryans was he's a defensive-minded coach. And I was DeMeco or bust. But it was he's a defensive-minded coach. Is he going to be able to handle the offense? And he failed. He failed. And that's where we are right now. So I think it's crucial. Because the layout and the surroundings are about to increase. The pressure is about to increase. Like expectations, it can be hard to go through a rebuild. And God, it sucked with especially the way that a lot of this stuff went down. But it can also be a little bit easier because your expectations are low. A lot of times when you stink, you're drafting earlier. Improving your roster can be a lot easier simply because the talent's not there, so you really can't do much worse. But then when you get in this situation where it's kind of stale, that's where you either find yourself being like a Mike McCarthy, Bill O'Brien, or you find yourself kind of elevating yourself like some of the elite squads. It's not easy. But I have no problem with what these guys are doing. But they got to figure it out on offense, and they got to show that that's not their blind spot. They don't have a blind spot for this. Steve says, I was mad at Nick for a while after the embarrassment on Christmas Day. I mean, what? Why were you mad at him? Like, what did you want him to do? What was the goal for Nick? Like, what more did you expect from him on Christmas Day? And you can make a case that losing that game, actually, you kind of avoided the Ravens, so it wasn't the worst thing. Did you expect to win that game? They're not up there with the Ravens. See, I don't think you should be too mad at Nick Caserio for that. Were the QBs they had in their first contract on the second OC? Being on the second OC, a lot of times the quarterback can be responsible for that too. The crazy thing about the CJ's draft class is every single quarterback that was drafted from CJ up to Will Levis, those guys are all on their second OC except the Colts with Shane Steichen. And I don't think Anthony Richardson can play, so I don't think it really matters there. Because of the O-line. Well, then why were they good last year? If it's just all the O-line. The O-line doesn't help. The O-line doesn't help. Maybe it's an evaluation thing. But, yeah, the O-line's not great. Ladarian Reed says, I think they should have a specific game plan that aligns with what they build this offense into roster-wise. It will be a rotating door if Caley or any other rising OC does well. Agree with you. Agree with you on that. Jeff G asked, Chip Kelly or Caley, who would be the better OC? I think you can make a case for both. You know, I don't look at either one and say you got to have this resume. Chip Kelly's obviously been around a little bit longer. I actually think crazy thing is Chip Kelly's probably a little less of a threat to leave, just based on where Caley is in his career and where Chip Kelly probably is in his career and what he wants to do. But you can make a case on either one of those. But I would probably lean, I don't think you can do wrong. The Chip Kelly thing is interesting because are they interested or not? Is he interested is really the question I think that we should really be asking. Like, is Chip Kelly interested in being the OC? I think that's really the way we got to look at it. Because I don't think the Texans are going to pull it out of nowhere and be like, hey, Chip Kelly, do you want to be here or not? I think it's just as much a question of whether he wants to. he's probably got a little bit of leverage when it comes to taking this gig or not. Trey of Texas. Kelly won't be a head coach in the NFL again. The others, if they really flip the offense over, are a threat to get plucked for another head coach gig. I agree. I don't know if that's a reason to avoid him, though. I don't know if that's like a reason to avoid him. Steve says Kaylee is slimmer. I think Chip Kelly, Cody Stutes has brought this up. I think it's a pretty funny observation. Funny, too, because it's kind of true. But the Texans have never had a fat coach with Caserio and DeMeco. They've never had a fat coach. That is a very astute observation. Astute observation, not astute observation. Astute observation. They've never had a fat coach. I wonder if Caserio does care about that. We're kind of joking about it, but for someone who doesn't even like eat Thanksgiving dinner, I do wonder if Nick Caserio is like, I want my coaches to be in shape. DeMeco too. DeMeco's still working out pretty heavily. But I do wonder if they care about that. I doubt it. If they don't hire Chip Kelly, it won't be because of that. I think it'll just be he's probably not interested. I think Kaylee's the guy from the beginning. I don't think this is just a DeMeco thing. I think this is as much of a Caserio thing as it is a DeMeco thing. So I don't think last time it was DeMeco's choice. So Bobby Slowick made sense. And it still is like DeMeco is still the face, but I think DeMeco is smart enough to know that he kind of screwed this up. And this is kind of like Nick Caserio can kind of vibe with the background of Kaylee, with the New England, the John Carroll college, all that type of stuff. So I would say that Caserio probably has a little bit more say this time around. Just a little bit. Last time Nick was kind of neutered. It was kind of a neutered Nick situation. I remember the press conference where I was talking about Nick Caserio looked a little bit neutered at that presser. It was his third coaching hiring. DeMeco was, I don't want to say he was forced on him, but it was a vibe thing. I don't know that Nick was 100% the guy that was in charge of that. I think he even said that the McNairs were going to help him out. And then when DeMeco got the job, figured that out. Q says, Landry, you were saying O-line does not matter. O-line does matter. O-line is the worst, man. What are you saying? I don't think I've said the offensive line doesn't matter. That has never happened. So I don't know if you're a bot or just not listening. I've definitely never said that. I've said that the offensive players can make the offensive line better, but never did I say the offensive line doesn't matter. I've said that if you give them this same offensive line and these same skill position guys, that it's not going to matter because he's going to fail just like Bobby did. But no, I've never said that. I'm on the 3-screen sports book type of vibe right now. That's what I'm watching. I'm watching UNLV, Utah State, Nevada, Boise State, and I don't even know what game is on the bottom. Not sure about that. But right now, Utah State and UNLV are going at it. If that's not a obvious thing. The YouTube 3 games, pretty elite. Pretty elite for sure. Could you see hiring Kaylee and Bobby replacing him on McVay stuff? I think Bobby Slowick would be a good OC somewhere where he doesn't have to call plays. I think if you allow Bobby Slowick to just kind of be a resource for a play calling head coach that calls plays, I think he could do it. I think he could do a pretty good job. So, yeah, I could easily see that. I could also see him going back to San Francisco and having some sort of role with Shanahan because they got the history. But Bobby belongs in the NFL. He's not an offensive coordinator for an offense that demands as much as what this situation demanded. I don't think he was built for it. Contrary to the reports that Bobby Slowick just wants to swing on people when they disagree with him. In my dealings with Bobby Slowick, I don't feel like Bobby Slowick is built, or nor does he possess the strong personality that you need to be able to oversee the offense for a defensive-minded head coach like DeMeco Ryans. So that's where I would feel on that. Chip can be the OC version of Steve Spags and KC. Good point, Landry. I don't know if he can be that. Spags is pretty iconic, but I will say, I think much like Spagnuolo, I think Andy Reid, the thing that Andy Reid probably loves about Spagnuolo is that Andy Reid can worry about his offense, and he knows that he doesn't have to worry about his defense, the defense. He knows that everything's going to be fine. So that's something that I think DeMeco needs. DeMeco does not need to be worrying about anything on the offensive side of the ball. He needs someone who can just take it, who can hold it down, and can figure it out. Does Nick Caserio possess the ability to do that? That's something that probably they'll have to figure out. But I do think personality is important here. I don't think you can be passive. I think you need to really be really, really nerdy with a confident grasp of what you're doing when it comes to calling plays. Or you need to be just an alpha that can control, like almost like another head coach type of personality, not head coach experience. Some people say you need a guy that has head coaching experience. I don't think that, but that's what they need. Engineer says it's looking like Nick Caserio might be the hire, which is for TBH. I don't know what that means. Chi-Town says the Texans need to draft Ibuka. Anything else is the wrong answer. I like him a lot. I think you could do a lot worse than that pick. We know CJ would like it. Very underrated. The surroundings that he's had kind of have limited the production, but a very, very underrated receiver. I think he's going to be a late first, early second round pick. Going to be interesting to see what he's like at the combine. I don't know what the athletic numbers are going to look like. I know he's going to get a hell of a lot of attention, though. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. They're definitely going to be thinking receiver. They're going to look really hard at receiver. I mean, they're probably going to sign one, and they're probably going to draft one. I hope. Because if they go defense, I think we got some things to question when it comes to DeMeco. This should be, it goes back to the urgency. It goes back to the vibe. That should be the number one thing is offense. Engineer says, I don't know what I was saying there, but he'd be cool.
High-grade marijuana called Kush on the streets.
Gotcha. Space Age says Ibuka's overrated. Depends how you look at him. I think some people might agree with you at 25. Some people might think that's a little bit too rich. His name is coming up. Is he a first round talent? Who knows? That'll be something to check out. Kickoff return, punt return specialist should be a top target. I don't know about top target, but I mean, they probably should take it a little bit serious. Although Steven Sims leaves here and all of a sudden Baltimore's letting him return punts. So I don't know what the hell to make of that. Whenever the guy is like public enemy number one on a team that's kind of struggling, And then all of a sudden he goes to Baltimore and he's returning. I thought that was a thing. I don't know that it should be a top priority. I think Dameon Pierce is actually a good kick returner. If you can make Dameon Pierce your third back and he can be a kick returner, I think you're fine there. You can do a lot worse. He's a good kick returner. Is he a RB2? No. But kick returner? RB3? Maybe even RB4? Do a lot worse than that. They cannot come back into the offseason and insist that Dameon Pierce is going to be RB2. They can't do that again. That doesn't mean you get rid of him. That doesn't mean you say bye. I know it's a different coach, and maybe Kaylee likes Dameon Pierce, but you need talent at running back. You almost need to be playing chess and checkers. Checkers short-term, chess long-term. We don't know how much longer Joe Mixon's going to be doing what he did this year. So if you can get a 1B type of running back and have like a two-headed monster, or maybe that 1B does something in the pass game that Joe Mixon's not capable of, you need to do that. And you also, let's be honest, this time next year, we might be talking about them needing a running back. These guys can wear down. I know we've gotten examples of guys like Saquon and Derrick Henry doing their thing. Mixon's a little bit further along than those guys, and he's asked to do a lot here. They need to figure something out at running back. It's like with Jalen Petrie last year. You know, a lot of people were talking about safety. I was talking about the possibility of drafting a safety. But I made it very clear, just because you draft a safety or just because you get a safety doesn't mean that you're getting rid of Jalen Petrie. Jalen Petrie can still be a valuable football player. Dameon Pierce can still be a valuable football player. He's not RB2. He's not RB2. So get as many backs as you can, stockpile them, figure it out. Got to be able to figure out. Smash Mouth football is alive. Eagles kind of carrying that flag. We know it's a copycat league. Watch the Eagles go win this Super Bowl. All of a sudden, everyone's going to be trying to run the rock. Genty might go top 5. Copycat league. Dare Gumbawale, nice little solid player. He can't be RB2. That's bad. That's bad. You got to do better than that. Pierce averaged 7 yards a carry this year. Give me a break. He had 2 long runs that fudged those stats. Come on. 7 yards a carry. Come on. You don't believe that. You saw the 2 runs. Those fudge those stats. Come on. You're using yards per carry. Come on. Let's be serious. He had the mop-up duty against the Patriots, and he had the long one against the Titans. Come on. Be serious. 7 yards per carry. Come on. You watch every play, Brandon. Let's be serious. Arthur Wilson says, hope they add at least one older, experienced guy on Kaylee's staff. Peterson, Reich, for example. I'm not sure they would even take a job lower than OC. I'm not even sure they would take a job lower than HC. I don't know. How bad does Frank Reich want to coach? I don't know that Kaylee's just going to be able to bring in Doug Peterson, who said he's going to sit out the year and have him on the staff. I think that's kind of maddening. Ain't no way we arguing for Pierce too. Brandon's on that cush. He's on that cush. Ain't no doubt. He ain't serious about that. Keepers on the offense as of now, I think it's Nico Collins. I think it's CJ Stroud. I think those are your keepers. Other than that, all bets are off. Yeah, everybody knows those Pierce numbers are skewed. Brandon knows better than that. He's smarter than that. He knows. He knows that. Do you think Kaylee can develop CJ more and come up with a unique scheme? I like where he comes from. I like his experience. I would hope so. But hell, we thought Bobby would too. CJ's a good player. He's already focusing on the mental side of things. He's not at the Pro Bowl. So we'll see where that goes. We're getting Cooper Kupp along with Haley. I think Cooper Kupp's going to be available in the offseason. They like Whittington and they like Puka. Whittington was kind of like that chess move where you knew it's much like the Mixon thing. That's what the good organizations do. Cooper Kupp's expensive. We're about to have to pay Puka. He's good, probably better than Cooper at this point. There's a slot receiver. It's not necessarily a need. You know what? We like it. Let's draft that. We'll have him on his rookie deal for 4 years. We can say bye to Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's not what he once was. But if you draft a young receiver and you have Cooper Kupp in the slot, you could do a lot worse. I mean, it's a better version of Robert Woods. Robert Woods was brought here because, yes, he was washed. He was coming off the torn ACL, but he knew the system, and he was kind of like someone that the young guys could look up to. Does anyone think Cooper Kupp's still Super Bowl MVP caliber? No. But if he's like one of those mentors that guys look to with the credibility and stuff, and he's working with someone he knows, you can do a lot worse. There's a lot of receivers that are going to be on the market that are veterans. You still draft a receiver, though. You need as many weapons as possible. I mean, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, maybe Deebo Samuel, maybe Christian Kirk. Be a lot of receivers on the market. There's a lot of running backs as well. Your skill position guys, we're going to be looking at a different skill position group this year. The John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson, can they emerge to wide receiver 3? No, they need to be battling their ass off to make the team, maybe for one spot. You need to make that happen. They got to figure that out. Noah Brown, no, not at this point. No, with Noah, I would have brought him back last year. I know he ended up getting hurt. But no, I think the Noah Brown thing's kind of sailed a little bit. And I mean, let's just be honest. Noah Brown gets hurt all the time. That was his biggest knock. He got hurt this year. I love Noah, though. Real tough Jersey dude, that Noah Brown. But no, I think the Noah Brown ship has sailed. If they liked him that much, then you would think that this would have been a year where they would have brought him back. They didn't bring him back. I was surprised. Thought they liked him a little bit more. Nico Collins, injuries are a problem with Nico. He's missed damn near 20 games. I think he's missed 17 maybe, if I'm not mistaken, in 4 years. Or how many ever? He's missed like 17 games, and that's not even counting the ones where he's banged up and leaves the game. He left the Jets game, I think, after the first series in 2023. This year, after the touchdown against the Bills, he left and didn't play in the second half. There's been other times where he's been kind of banged up. That's always the misleading thing, is sometimes you look at it and you say, well, this guy's missed this many games, and it's actually worse. Because he was available, and then he ended up leaving. He ended up leaving the field early. So it's almost like missing a game. It doesn't go down as missing a game, but he was banged up and he wasn't really available. So it's the same type of impact. Yeah, in 4 seasons, Nico's missed 3, 10, 12, 17 games. Not counting the ones where he's hobbled off. So even the guy you feel really good about, he kind of gets banged up. That's why you got to get a lot younger at the position. But it's a fun time. It is what it is. It's urgent, but it's a fun time. But I think the most astonishing thing, to go back where we started with DeMeco Ryans, is just the massive drop-off that you've had offensively in year 2 of DeMeco Ryans, and how you feel about the offense now as compared to last year. They're going to have to figure that out. Garrett Wilson is a crazy. I mean, Garrett Wilson is like if you're a receiver away. I don't think this team's a receiver away. I like Garrett Wilson, but you're giving up prime draft equity, and you're giving a prime contract. So you talk about salary cap space. and you talk about draft assets, you're having to give up both of them for one guy. That's typically a team that's just a receiver away. That's typically something they would do. You can do a lot worse than Garrett Wilson. He's a hell of a player. That's a lot to give up unless you think they're that close. The Texans have invested in the offensive line. Trent asks, do you think they'll invest in the offensive line? They've invested in the offensive line more than anybody else in the league. Question should be, do you think they'll evaluate correctly? There are very, 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 very few teams who've invested more in the offensive line than the Texans. Their investments have sucked. Their offensive line is basically Hawk Tua coins. That's basically what it is. The Hawk Tua coin is basically the Texans' offensive line. Instead of putting her on that coin that ended up being a scam, they could have put the entire Texans' offensive line on there. Their pictures on the coin. Terrible investment. Awful. Ice in Alaska. So the investment's not the problem. This isn't an Andrew Luck situation. This isn't, I mean, it can be malpractice in a different area, but it's not neglect. Go through everything that they've given up for that offensive line. Going back to O'Brien, you can go back to the 2 first and the second with Tunsil, which was outlandish. Titus Howard first round, Juice Scruggs second round, Shaq Mason, one of the highest paid guards in the league. Scruggs second round, Patterson sixth. I mean, top 5 highest paid offensive line in the league. It's terrible. So it hasn't been that it's been a poor investment. I'm not completely giving up on Juice Scruggs, but he's got to figure something out. He hasn't been good at all. I mean, the fact that we're even having the Scruggs-Patterson discussion, it kind of goes back to the frustration with the offense. But hopefully we're getting to know an offensive coordinator. Could be Nick Caserio. They're also going to talk to Bill Lazor, which I think is an important interview to kind of see what he thinks about this offense and how he would improve it, given he was a part of it. We'll keep a close eye on it. And we'll see how this ends up going. But the one thing about this offseason is the honeymoon phase is over. The assets are a lot smaller. They're going to become even more small when you find players. So much like DeMeco is able to do with his defense, he needs to find someone on offense that can coach these guys up. And they're going to have to figure it out sooner rather than later. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Subscribe, like, ride along. Always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. The offseason is here, but the work don't stop. SNL tomorrow at 4 o'clock. We're going 5 and 5 at 4 o'clock. 5 questions to the candidate and 5 questions from the candidate to the Texans front office. Little role play tomorrow, live from Alabama. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Let's see.
Localize every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days, opinions to give, we got takeaways.